Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Now, up in just a few minutes, we have our influencer segment brought to you by Biche Cucina, and we're featuring Nikki Giavasis. She's an entrepreneur, an author, and a mega influencer. Today, she's here to share her horrifying story about mold poisoning and how it almost caused her permanent damage. Now, she's coming on directly from her retreat in Mexico, where she's currently detoxing. So a big shout out to Palmay, the House of I Resort in Mexico, Playa del Carmen. Now, as she gets settled into the broadcast room, let's chat hidden hazards in our environment. Now, if you've ever dealt with a mold infestation, you might have had some concerns about the effects of the exposure it had on your health. Perhaps you even wondered if you needed to take steps to purge mold's effects from your body. Well, some hazards in the home are easy to see, like a loose electrical socket or torn carpet on the stairs, but others are harder to spot. And some, like mold, are invisible in the very air you breathe. Molds are microscopic fungi that grow everywhere, both outdoors and indoors. And they're a natural part of our environment, and they thrive in areas with moisture. Molds spread by releasing spores. Now, mold becomes a health risk to people when they inhale these invisible spores. And these spores produce a substance called mycotoxin that provokes a strong immune system response in a lot of people, leading some serious health risks. Now, with many people naturally being able to rid themselves of accumulated mycotoxins through bodily sweat and waste, others can't handle the total load. When that happens, the individual can become very sick, and high levels can cause symptoms that mimic the common cold. Now, mold can also trigger allergic or asthma symptoms in some people. So, everyone reacts differently to mold, and your personal sensitivity to it will influence how quickly you develop symptoms. And here to chat some more and give us insight is Nikki Giavasis. Welcome to the show, superstar.
Hello.
Tell me, what has brought you all the way to Palmay, the House of I, which is a natural, forward thinking beach enclave in Mexico's premier award winning progressive wellness and spa resort. It's a little sanctuary, if you will. Tell me about your process and what brings you there.
Well, I became sick from mold poisoning, and it's been taking me so long to get well that finally, when I couldn't breathe or think anymore, I was losing my memory. I knew I had to do something drastic, which was the first thing is you have to leave the environment. So I had to leave the environment completely.
Talk to me about what led you to suspect that mold was causing your health issues.
Well, I started noticing that when I would leave town, or if I would leave and stay at a hotel, or if I'd leave and go to my daughter's house, I would feel well. And then when I would return to my home, I would get really sick. And I was actually filming a movie and I couldn't remember my lines anymore. And I used to have a genius IQ, so it was kind of difficult when my brain wasn't really working like it used to, and I couldn't remember simple things.
That's so terrible. I mean, at this point, a lot of people are suffering just like you, and they don't even know it. And the most serious problems, caused by mold are caused by small molecules called these mycotoxins. What was your home an old home? What led you to really look around in your environment and look under the hood, so to speak?
Well, it wasn't that it was old, it was that there was previous water damage and it wasn't completely remediated properly. So when they don't get every section, that mold can grow and spread through the home. And I think that's what happened with my place. They didn't get all of it.
Understood, understood. So what were your symptoms other than your brain fog and, some of the more alarming ones? Were you feeling lethargic? What led you to really take action, and what does the detox process look like?
Yeah, I was getting really bad headaches and I never get headaches and I was completely lethargic. I started also getting really bad inflammation. Like my body was probably 20, 25 pounds bigger than normal. So it's like hard to speak, hard to access words. And then the inflammation in my brain was affecting everything, but I could see it in my stomach. Like everything was just completely swollen. Like it looked like, I can't even describe how bad it looked. It just looked very huge.
I'm so sorry you had to go through that. Well, obviously, your body's inflammatory reaction is telling you that there's a foreign invader that needs to obviously you need to rid of it naturally. Now, when you look at the timeline, how long till symptoms subsided after you moved out?
They still haven't subsided. Actually, sorry. I wish they'd subsided, but I don't. I think there's got to be another part of the process where I have to do a lot of infrared and hyperbaric and a lot of just detox cleanses to really get it out of my system. Because once it's in your organs, it grows in there and it spreads through your bloodstream. So it's in my skin. Everything's just dehydrated, and it's not out.
And what medications are you currently taking?
I'm not taking any medications right now. I'm trying to do things like with natural remedies, a lot of sea moss and things like that. There is a protocol from Dr. Richie Shoemaker, and I think I'm going to start that. But first, I'm going to do everything I can here as far as a wellness protocol.
Yes, of course. I mean, you're at a really good place. They pride themselves on relaxation, detoxing, and ridding yourself of, exactly that toxicity. Another interesting thing is the duration of exposure to mold. So similarly, right, the duration of the one-time mold exposure matters versus if it's something that you've been living with in your home. Obviously, that affects a lot of your outcome and how serious you're going to react. The proximity to mold, right? It also depends on how close you are to the actual mold, because we know that the proximity affects how much mold you've been exposed to. So from this point on, how long have you been dealing with this timeline?
It's been about since October, on and off. But especially from basically New Year's to this past month is when I got really sick, because I had mold in the past, and I think that's why my immune system is more sensitive to it, because there's some people they aren't sensitive, but there's a quarter of the people who are sensitive, and once you've had more than one exposure, it hits you a lot harder.
Of course, of course. And over time, we know for a fact mold exposure can cause more severe effects, like increased risk of upper and lower respiratory symptoms, chronic sinusitis, fatigue, even so much to go as far as organ damage. Then you have Legionnaire's disease. And then, of course, the development of asthma in children can also be as a result of mold poisoning. Now, I know that there's a mold poisoning test that people can do. What method did you use to be able to figure out that your body was suffering?
Well, you mean the mold test in the home or a health test?
In your body, right, the body.
Oh, I got a blood test and I got some other testing. So they actually do a swab in the nose. It's really very similar to COVID, which is pretty crazy, because it's something you can't see, and it's such a similar reaction in the body.
Interesting. Yeah, the best testing methods to utilize are a urine mycotoxin test and a home environment test. Of course, mold testing is also, going to be able to allow people to figure out if they need to vacate their home or not. But I'm sorry this had to go through you, but thank you for spreading the word and coming on, especially from Mexico. I know that you're there to relax, and I just want to wish you all the best to get better.
Thank you. Today's day one, so hopefully by the time I leave, I'm back, better with the food here and the environment. I think I'm going to get well.
Yes, of course. The House of I, Palmay, the House of I. Definitely check them out. They're in Mexico, in Playa del Carmen. And you have to check out Nikki Giavasis. She's a mega influencer, a published author, an entrepreneur, and a dear friend of the shows. Nikki, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Guys, check out Nikki Giavasis official on the gram. That was our influencer segment brought to you by Biche Cucina. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.